Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles, and once again I am absolutely exhausted after spending the weekend at the Swedish Tank Museum. And oh, did you see that? Wait, quick, let me just rewind. I completely missed it at the time, and I only saw it when I came to review the footage afterwards. Here we go. Rewind, rewind, rewind. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? God, wasn't that far back. Oh, there he is. That is Isolate, World of Warships community contributor, and one of my teammates in the World of Warships exhibition match that we played at the Wargaming League Grand Finals, and I walked right past him without recognising him. Sorry, Isolate. We met inside later on. But yeah, oh, shocking. I'm terrible, I really am. Anyway, this is what I got up to over the weekend. This is the Swedish Tank Museum at Arsenalen, about an hour and a half outside of Stockholm. On a typical day, the museum receives anything between 2 and 20 visitors. On Saturday, they had 1,600. They didn't. I'll tell you what, the queues for the bathroom were impressive, to say the least. It was a great day. It was, of course, the day that Wargaming were unveiling the new gaming area that they've set up in the upper floor of the museum. They've built a rest area where you can just sit down and chill and watch stuff on the big screen TV and do some 3D puzzles. They've got World of Tanks Blitz playable on a bunch of tablets that are set up there. They've got World of Tanks PC that's playable on a bunch of PCs that they've set up there. And it seemed like half the population of Scandinavia turned up for the opening. There were people queuing up 2 hours. When we arrived, we turned up at about 8 o'clock in the morning. The museum doesn't open until 10. There were already something like 70 people queuing up waiting to get in. And they'd come from all over Europe, not just Sweden. Obviously the majority were from Sweden, and the Swedish World of Tanks clan Moose were along to assist Wargaming with handing out the goodie bags and keeping the crowd entertained. But also people from Norway, people from Finland, people from Denmark, people from the Netherlands, Romania, Serbia, Croatia, Germany. There was even somebody from Belfast in Northern Ireland, which was actually, I'd met him before at Tankfest. It was quite astounding how many of the people who were actually at the museum I had met before, who'd made the journey over to Bovington in the UK to attend Tankfest, because I kept seeing faces. I thought, I know you from somewhere. Don't... Yes, we met at Tankfest. It was a really, really good day. I spent most of the time just meeting people, signing autographs, mostly signing the t-shirts. Wargaming had arranged some exclusive Arsenalen opening only t-shirts that you can't get anywhere else. So I spent most of the day just walking around, saying hello, talking to people, signing their t-shirts, posing for pictures, and accepting the amazing generosity of the Swedes. At times it felt like everybody I met had a gift for me. I mean, that obviously wasn't the case, but if I keep this up, I'm going to need to start taking an extra suitcase along to these kind of events just to be able to take all the loot home that I accumulate when I'm there. There was some amazing stuff, which I will be showing you in a future video, but somebody had actually done a 3D printed and modelled Mighty Jingles little bust for me to... It's actually sitting right now next to one of my Imperial Sand Troopers, right in front of my monitor. It really is incredible. One guy, goes by the name of Treadhead1, had arranged... I could tell instantly when he handed over the packages that they were models. I could tell by the way he'd packed them. One for me and one for Rita. Now, we haven't opened Rita's yet because she's not home right now. She's away messing with tanks over the weekend. But as soon as I got home, because I had to pack it very carefully, I didn't want to damage it, it was actually a model... Oh, hold on a minute. That's one of the Thins. The guy there with a Coke bottle sticking out of his pocket. You can tell by the badge on his cap. Yeah, I had to be very careful because I was actually wearing a Russian hat when I was filming this segment. And I saw a Finn and I thought, oh no. Because that, of course, is the #1 rule of Russian warfare, isn't it? Don't mess with the Finns. But anyway, I digress. This guy had actually made a model ME262 in woodwork class in middle school. And he'd held on to it for, it must have been 15 years. And gave it to me. So, you know, that was quite an honour. I can't wait to see what he's made for Rita. We obviously haven't opened that one yet. We're waiting for Rita to get home. It really was an amazing day. I mean, I don't know what it is that... Maybe it was just the scale of the event. I mean, there were 1,600 people turned up, and the size of the museum itself was about the size of the Vehicle Conservation Centre at Bovington. So, you know, it's not like Tankfest or Tiger Day where thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people turn up, but that's not really that much of an issue at Bovington because Bovington's such a big museum. Arsenalen is a smaller museum, and it's got an impressive collection, but it's not as big as Bovington. But still, 1,600 people packed in there. It was kind of busy. There wasn't a lot of space to move around. And Wargaming had set aside a 2-hour window for me to do a meet and greet with the people that had turned up to, say hello. Of course, it went on a lot longer than 2 hours, as these things always do. And yet, it never got impersonal at Arsenalen in the way that it can at other events. I mean, Tankfest is a prime example. I mean, I love Tankfest to bits, but there are just too many people there, and there's not enough me to go around. And so at something like Tankfest, it can feel very impersonal, because I'm trying to see as many people as I possibly can. And I'm still going to disappoint somebody, because there's just too many people and not enough time. And when you're there at Tankfest, it can be kind of like a sausage factory. It's just, hello, who are you? Shake their hand, take the picture, sign whatever they want me to sign, and then get them out of there, because there's 300 people queued up behind them. And I don't really get the time that I like to stop and talk to people. So it can feel very, very impersonal at something like Tankfest. But here at Arsenalen, I had the time. And it wasn't just a case of, hello, sign the autograph, take the picture, move on to the next person. I actually had the time to sit there and talk to people. And it because of that, I think it just never got old. And I really, really enjoyed meeting everybody at the museum. It was a fantastic experience. Now, that does mean that because I basically spent the entire day on Saturday just walking around talking to people, that I got I did get some filming, but almost no filming done on the Saturday. Luckily, we turned up the day before on the Friday, when the museum was basically empty and the only people there were us and the Wargaming employees who were setting up everything for the next day, which meant that we pretty much had the entire museum to ourselves. And Stefan, the museum director, was entirely happy to let us climb all over and into one of the 2 S-tanks that they have there. So I do have footage of all of the exhibits at the museum, and I will be doing a video. I just need to wait because, as I said, I didn't get an awful lot of filming done on the Saturday of the event itself, but they did have a drone camera flying around and filming the S-tank, and I am going to be able to get access to that footage as well. So I'm going to put together an absolutely cracking video of the exhibits that they have at Arsenalen, as well as lots and lots of footage, except with audio this time, of all the people that turned up. Because without them, it would have been it wouldn't have been a bad visit, because it's a tank museum, and tank museums are awesome, but it really was the people that turned up that made the event special. They were absolutely amazing. And we're not just saying that, by the way, because a number of people from Wargaming, obviously privately, he said, to an audience of 500,000 people in Mingles with Jingles, so I'm not going to mention any names. But they did say to me afterwards that they just couldn't believe how nice and friendly and well-behaved the Swedes were compared to, other nations when they've been doing similar sort of things in other countries. And the example was downstairs, aside from the permanent gaming area, they also had a bunch of other PCs set up where you could sit down and play World of Tanks, and they were running a contest for whoever earned the most experience in a single game. So those were the rules. You had one go at a game of World of Tanks. Try to earn the most experience, and they were giving away prizes to the 10 people that earned the most experience, and they weren't great prizes, they were just like bonus codes for something. A couple of days premium time, some gold, and maybe a tier 2 premium tank. But, prizes are prizes. And what's happened when they've done things like this in other countries, as you'd expect, if somebody logs in and has a terrible game, when they're trying to actually win a prize, and the first one on the team killed, and they haven't done any damage, and so on and so on, they have a bit of a fit and lose their temper about it. Everybody around them who's watching laughs, and then they refuse to leave. They want to have another go. Got none of that from the Swedes at all. It was unbelievable. They were just so pleasant. There's no other real word, no other real way to describe it. They were just so pleasant and good-natured. People were commiserating them on having a bad game rather than laughing at them for having a bad game, which I have to admit is probably what I would have done. But, and nobody refused to leave and have another go. They accepted that they only had one turn, and if it wasn't a good go, well, yeah, fine. Somebody else have a go and try to do better than me. Which was quite remarkable because you know what gamers are like. It's just, but no, not the Swedes. No, they're just such good-natured people. It's amazing. So, that was Sweden. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It's only the second time I've ever been to Sweden, but that was with the Navy, and that was like 20 years ago, and I can barely remember it. When you go somewhere with the Navy, all you're really interested in is beer and women. And the beer is very expensive, and the women just weren't interested. So they obviously have far better taste. So yeah, this was a really, really good visit to Sweden. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Anyway, coming up next on the calendar, this is kind of short notice, but Rita and I have both been invited to EpicCon at Frankfurt in Germany. And that's the 9th, 10th and 11th of December. Now, I realise this is probably only going to be of limited interest to most of you, but I figured it was worth mentioning anyway. EpicCon is a brand new convention. This is going to be the first time they've ever run it. And it's basically a celebration of all things manga, anime and Japan. Various internationally famous cosplayers are going to be attending, including the Hungarian cosplayer. I think she's Hungarian. I better check my facts there. If she's Romanian, I'll never hear the end of it. NG Knight, as well as the American cosplayer Yaya Han. And a whole bunch of other people that you will probably never have heard of unless you're into anime. So, if you're interested in this sort of thing, and I realise most of you aren't going to be, but enough of you are that it's definitely worth mentioning. I'll put the details of the convention down in the video description. We're going to be there on the Friday and the Saturday, but not the Sunday, because EpicCon is right before Wargaming Fest in Moscow. So we need to get back on the Sunday in order to get a couple of days to decompress and pack and get everything ready to go to Moscow in time for Wargaming Fest, which I think, I better check my dates, is on the 15th. No, just check the dates. Wargaming Fest is on the 17th of December, but we're flying out on the 15th, which is a bit of a bummer because that's the day Star Wars Rogue One is released in the UK, so I'm not going to get to see it on the day it's released. Damn you, Wargaming, why you do this? But yes, we're flying out to Moscow on the 15th of December, which means that we get the day before Wargaming Fest to hopefully do a bit of sightseeing in Moscow and see Red Square and the Kremlin and all that sort of thing. And then I don't even know what day it is, I'll have to check the calendar, but the 17th of December is Wargaming Fest, and then we fly back on the 18th. I've never been to Russia, so that's going to be amazing. And I now, funnily enough, have an appropriate hat to wear in the middle of the Russian winter, because when I went to Arsenal, seriously, the first thing in the morning, we literally got out of the car at 8 o'clock. 2 hours before the event started, there were already something like 70 people queuing up. And as I got out of the car, fumbling around for the video camera, some random Swedish guy came running over to me with a Ushanka, one of those Russian furry hats, complete with the Red Star badge on the front, shouted "Jingles" and just stuck it on my head and ran off. So I now have the appropriate hat to wear for my visit to Moscow. Fantastic. Speaking of Wargaming Fest, because Wargaming are not getting away scot-free this week, have you seen the Black Friday sales in the EU gift shop? Now, I know you might think you've seen the Black Friday sales, but trust me, they're not sales. I mean, they don't seem to have quite grasped the concept of what a sale actually is. I'm talking about the T-34B in particular, but there's more. The black, because that's all it is, it's just a reskinned black-painted T-34. It's exactly the same as the existing T-34 Tier 8 Heavy Premium tank, except it's black, and it costs a bloody fortune. There are multiple packages available to buy the T-34B, and none of them are just the T-34B. You have to buy a whole bunch of stuff with it. It's like one step forward, two steps back with Wargaming sometimes. It's almost as if we hadn't had this argument with them 11 months ago. To give them credit, 11 months ago when we raised this whole issue in Cyprus at their HQ, steps were made in the right direction. And yet here we are, 11 months later, and the T-34B is only available in the EU and North American gift shops as a bundle, and there are only two bundles available. The most expensive one weighs in at around about £86, which equates to about €100, and the other bundle is, again, it's the tank and a whole bunch of stuff, premium account, gold, boosters, all that sort of thing, and that weighs in at over £50. Now you can buy, if you just want to buy the T-34, that'll cost you just a fraction under £37. And that's just the T-34, but you can't buy the T-34B, which is just a T-34 painted black. That's it. The stats are no different. It's just a reskinned T-34, but you can't buy that for less than almost double that price, packaged with a whole bunch of stuff that you don't necessarily want or need. But that's not strictly true, because you can buy it just as a standalone tank if you're on the Russian server. And guess what? Apparently the Russians do actually understand what the whole concept of a sale is in the first place, because they're offering these packages with anything up to a 30% discount. I mean, it's not strictly fair to say that there are no discounts available on the EU gift shop, but we're talking about a 10% discount here and a 20% discount there. You're actually getting a big discount on the on the Russian server. You know, they understand what the whole concept of a Black Friday sale is there, and if you can't afford the big bundle, you can just buy the tank. Can't do that on the North American server, you can't do that on the EU server. And it doesn't end there, because there are other new premium tanks available that I quite like the look of. Well, I say I like the look of them. I don't like the look of them, but I'm actually quite interested in getting the tanks. And we're talking about things like the T26E5 Patriot and the AMX M4 Liberty. If I could have the option of buying them without the American flag painted all over one of them and the French flag painted all over the other one, I'd probably buy them, but I can't. You can on the North American server though, and this is where things start to get quite bizarre, because let's face it, no offence to the Americans or anything, but America is probably the one market that really wouldn't mind having a T26E5 with the stars and stripes painted all over it. And they get the option of having it without the stars and stripes painted all over it. Europe, on the other hand, and again, no offence to America, but you can understand that, I mean, me personally, I'd just rather have my tank looking like a tank rather than looking like a flag, but I don't get that option. No, for me, it's buy the Patriot looking like Old Glory or don't buy it at all. And same with the AMX M4. I really wonder sometimes, it's almost as if somebody at Wargaming has got a big old dartboard, and on that dartboard they've got various different price packages and bundles, and then they just blindfold somebody, hand them a bunch of darts and get them to throw them randomly at the board, and wherever the first dart lands, right, that's how we're going to be selling things on the EU server, and wherever the second dart lands, that's how we're going to be selling things on the North American server. And I really wonder sometimes, I do. And yet at the same time, if you look at the World of Warships gift shop, EU server, World of Warships gift shop, all of the new premiums that they've introduced there, you can buy as a big bundle, you can buy as a small bundle, and you can buy as a standalone. HMAS Perth, for example. They're still offering the Belfast in various different packages, and if you want, you can't afford to lay out €100 because, you know, you live in Latvia or Portugal and that's a substantial amount of your month's wages, then you can just buy the ship. But not in the World of Tanks gift shop. No, it's, you know, hand over half your month's salary or nothing. If you're that desperate to have a T-34 painted black, just download a skin for it. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything, because that's all it is. The T-34B is just the T-34 that's already in the gift shop for £36.77, painted black. If you're that desperate to have a black T-34, just download a skin for it. I'll bet you somebody has done it. In fact, you know what? I'm going to Google it right now. Hang on a sec. Yep, I just Googled T-34 black skin, and on the first page, half a dozen websites where you can download a skin for your existing T-34 Tier 8 premium heavy tank and have it looking and performing exactly like the T-34B that they're flogging for the Black Friday sale for €100. And it doesn't cost you a penny. So, yeah, it's your money, spend it wisely. Well, anyway, there's one other thing that I just remembered. One of the guys that I bumped into at Arsenalen wanted to thank me for addressing the subject of, well, basically last week's episode of Mingles with Jingles, where I spent great length talking about making the effort to thank people who go out and above and beyond the call of duty to be a good teammate when you're playing World of Tanks or World of Warships or whatever. And the reason is because he has actually noticed. Now, I don't know if this is just confirmation bias, and perhaps people had been thanking their teammates for playing well prior to me doing that episode of Mingles with Jingles, but he just never really noticed it, and it was only when I did the episode of Mingles with Jingles and raised this whole issue that he suddenly started paying attention and started noticing a lot more people than he could remember actively taking the time to congratulate their teammates and thank their teammates when they performed well or help them out. But I'm really curious to know whether or not this has been your experience or not as well. I'd like to think it has, because I'd like to think that I am making a difference, because I do try. But at the same time, I'm not, you know, big-headed enough to think that everybody's suddenly going to be holding hands and going all hippy-dippy-skippy just because I asked people to do so in an episode of Mingles with Jingles. But at the same time, and without wanting to sound too big-headed about it, I do know that I do have some sort of influence where this sort of thing is concerned, but I've got absolutely no way of knowing how much. The TOG 2 is an example. I keep badgering Wargaming to provide me with sales figures. Because I know that people have gone out and bought a TOG 2 and had fun playing the TOG 2 in platoons, because I have, and always will, insist that playing the TOG 2 in a platoon is immense fun. But Wargaming have never, ever confirmed, the kind of sales figures that spike, for example, every time I put a TOG 2 video up and tell everybody how much fun it is. So, and obviously this is no kind of scientific experiment, but I am keen to know what your perception has been, what your experience has been since last week's episode of Mingles with Jingles when you're playing World of Tanks and World of Warfare. Have you noticed people being, less of a shit to each other when things haven't been going quite the way they might want in a game of World of Tanks or World of Warships? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether or not people are being nicer to each other. As I said, it could just be confirmation bias. It may be that people have been thanking their teammates in battle chats, and people just haven't really noticed it, because people do have a tendency to focus on the negative. But since I raised the issue, people may be paying more attention and noticing when people are being, less of a shit to each other in battle chat. And it doesn't matter whether or not they actually are doing it more often. If you're noticing it, your perception is that the community is getting better, and that can be all that it really takes, because you're noticing the positive more than you're noticing the negative, and so you're not getting as upset by all of the negative. And so, you're in a better frame of mind when you're playing World of Tanks, which means that you're less likely to start raging at other people when you're playing World of Tanks, and it can have a knock-off effect regardless of what the actual reality of the situation is. So I'm very, very interested to know what your perception of the whole issue has been since last week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I'd really like to know. So go ahead and let me know what your experience has been in the comments, good or bad. I mean, I'm sure that people are still being complete arseholes to each other because, it's multiplayer gaming, and being arseholes to each other is what people do in multiplayer gaming. But at the same time, I'm very, very interested to know whether you've experienced more of the opposite as well, with people being, not arseholes to each other and actually taking the time to spread a bit of love around for a change. Anyway, that's about it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I just wanted to bring one other thing to your attention. Those of you who've actually been paying attention to the Armoured Warfare co-op battle that's been running for the last several minutes might have noticed a couple of names that just completely by random I happen to end up playing in the same game as. There's Rusakova up there from Philo, First In Last Out, World of Tanks clan, also present in Armoured Warfare, and that's Rita's clan. And also, in the Crab, scouting for the team is Tanknut Dave, which was an amazing coincidence because Tanknut Dave is actually a friend of mine and Rita's. He's actually quite a big name in the British tanking community, and when I say the tanking community, I mean real tanks, not the digital ones. So what were the chances of getting in the same match as both of them, completely at random? So that was quite pleasant, and I'm just glad I didn't embarrass myself in front of Dave. I actually did quite well out of this match and ended up with a platinum supply crate, so ooh, yay me. And that's it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. Again, thank you to everybody from all over Scandinavia and beyond who turned up at Arsenal on Saturday. We had a fantastic time, and it wouldn't have been as good as it was without you. And I hope everybody's enjoyed this slightly shorter than average episode of Mingles with Jingles, but I have been travelling all day, I'm completely exhausted, and I've been surviving on pure caffeine for the last 4 hours as I put this episode of Mingles with Jingles to bed. But I hope you enjoyed it anyway. And don't forget to have your say in the comments. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.